Hey everybody, this is Andy from Tennis Euphoria, and today I'm sharing with you my review of the Head Graphene 360 Plus Extreme line of rackets. So I thought I'd review the MP version of the Extreme, as that is the sort of classic tweener, 100 square inch, 300 grams unstrung racket, and will probably be the most bought, I would expect. But I also elected to cover the Tour because that looks really interesting, a kind of break from the norm in the Extreme line. And when it comes to head rackets, I think most would agree that Graphene 360 Plus is a step in the right direction by Head. So graphene across the whole of the racket seems to be sort of working very well, and graphene rackets from Head, in my view, have been getting better and better each time they're released. But of course, with the Plus now, we have added spiral fibers across the ranges, and that is making a big difference because we have nice feeling rackets again from Head. I guess this was kind of broken to the market with the Gravity. I was certainly really taken by that combination of technology in the Prestige line of rackets, and I absolutely love the MP, as you will have seen on the channel, in that range. I suppose for us all, we're probably waiting for the Radical, aren't we, with this Graphene 360 Plus technology. So really keen to see what this does for the Extreme line. And I've got a bit of a soft spot for the Extreme. I actually quite liked the previous really bright yellow version of the racket. As far as 100 square inch sort of tweener rackets go, if I had to play with one, it would have probably been that I would pick. Certainly for me, I'd go for that over the Aero. And whilst the Dunlop that I reviewed recently has some nice control to it and good comfort, on balance I think it's the Extreme that I would take, although they're not particularly suited to my game style, those tweener rackets. But what it does mean is that I have a good basis to have a look at this update, as I have got an MP version from the previous and I've hit with it occasionally. For the comparison, I strung it up with Head Links Tour, and early shout out to Head, really. It was great to buy the MP and the Tour, and it actually came from factory with good strings in it. Head Links Tour in grey, so that looked really good. I expected it to be kind of mid-tension off the shelf, but as you can see from my little gadget, it was relatively high in the range at about £56 across both of the rackets. So I will probably cut that out and restring at a slightly lower kind of £51, £52, I think, if I hold on to the rackets. So what is the common tech across all of the Extreme lines? Well, I guess you have the spin and power grommets. You also then have the Graphene 360 Plus spiral fibers now, of course, enhanced feel potentially. Got a spin shaft, which I think works pretty well. And then of course you have a really open 16 by 19 string pattern typically. So let's have a look at the specs of the MP. You've got that 300 gram unstrung weight, 100 square inch head size. The beam is still 23, 26, 21. So I think overall, you know, we have the same mold here. Subtle difference though, this is listed as a bit stiffer by Tennis Warehouse at 66 RA, and the balance point remains similar, and so you do have that balance point which gives you a fair bit of weight in the head, which I typically like, and it's why I like the Extreme MP. I took the swing weight at 324 on mine, however I think it's listed at sort of 325 elsewhere. Comparing that to the parting yellow Larry Extreme that doesn't have the spiral fibers, then pretty much the same, 100 square inches, 300 grams unstrung weight, 325 balance point, a lower RA of 63 and a listed swing weight of 328, and I got 330 on mine, 23, 26, 21 beams. So I think things are largely the same, you just maybe have a slightly higher swing weight on the previous, which I always really enjoyed. And on court, then I think basically you have a very similar racket. You've got the spiral fibers changing the feel a little bit. I guess I felt a little bit more connected to the ball on impact. It's perhaps a little bit more plush. However, overall, I always really enjoyed that swing weight on the previous version. Obviously nothing I couldn't fix with a little bit of lead on the newer version, but still it remains for me, if I had to play with a tweener 100 square inch racket with power and spin, it would be my choice. Why would I go for that over the obvious competitor, the Aero? Well, for me the Aero gives you more spin, it's more headlight ultimately, but what I find with the Aero is that it's kind of pretty brittle, 71 RA stiffness rating, and I think it would hurt my arm in the longer term. It has a slightly different shaft beam, at 23, 26 and 23, and I just think that the beam in the Extreme just gives a better playing experience for me, and I think they're quite comparable when it comes to power. I think the Aero you get a little bit more spin, but overall I think I prefer the sort of feel that I get from the Extreme. So overall, you know, pretty good, improved feel, but pretty much you're not going to notice the difference. But then what about the Tour? So what is that all about? Very much in the realms of the Babolat Pure Aero VS that I recently reviewed on the channel. Also, I guess it's very sort of similar on paper to a Yonex V-Core 98. So you've got a 98 square inch racket that potentially could deliver loads of spin because it still has those spin grommets and the spin shaft. So, you know, quite interested to hit with this. And taking it on court, I immediately quite enjoyed it. So the specs are 98 square inches, 16 by 19 string pattern, but I have to say it's a slightly tighter pattern and it's got good control for me, not a sort of ridiculous launch angle, still can generate some decent spin. It's quite headlight at 315 balance point, 22, 23, 21 beam, and I thought that was quite interesting. I think the 23 gives it relatively good stability for its weight. And then we also have a RA of 65, and it did feel sort of pretty comfortable for me. The only thing I would say is that the swing weight listed at 318, I noticed. I certainly would look to add some weight to this to bring the swing weight up, and I guess with it being so head light you have a little bit of room to maneuver there with regards to getting a bit of weight at the top of the racket, improving plow and swing weight, because it's so head light at the moment you could probably change that balance point a little bit. As time went on, as I was sort of hitting with it more, I did find myself gelling with this racket. I mean, I guess it's more in line with the sort of specs that I enjoy anyway. But one thing I would say is that I increasingly wouldn't necessarily categorize it as a competitor to the Babolat Aero VS or the V-Core 98, because it doesn't actually feel to me to be such a spin machine. I would class it more like a sort of headlight pure strike. It also plays quite similar, I think, to the Yonex E-Zone 98, and I reviewed that really positively, and I think just like that E-Zone 98 you could add a little bit of weight to this racket and make it play really, really nice. Dare I say, it almost plays like a sort of lively, potentially more comfortable and slightly more stable Radical MP. And the more I played and hit with it, the more I hit some sort of competitive points with it, then I was seriously enjoying it, to be honest. I do think I could improve the racket on my backhand side. I could do with the extra plow and swing weight. But on the forehand side, if anything, it was probably helping me out a little bit. Kind of nice launch angle next to your real control orientated rackets that I gravitate to. And it was probably meaning that I was hitting the net a little bit less on my forehand side, and that kind of headlight whippy nature was meaning that I was getting around the ball really well, finding some nice angles. So I think this racket has a lot of potential. But I suppose I do think it's a little bit confused, and where it sort of fits in to the overall sort of headline of rackets does confuse me a little bit, because I don't really think this Tour is an extreme racket. If you compare it to the MP, which is very much sort of spin and power based, the Tour just doesn't give you that sort of outrageous power and spin that you're sort of looking for. Best way I can demonstrate this, non-scientific I guess, but check out just my standard sort of T first serve with the MP. And then if you compare that to, again, just the standard stock serve with the Tour, there is a slight difference in power and pace, that's for sure. However, then if you look at my second serve, and again, I didn't do much warming up for this, I just wanted to go up and hit off straight away, non-scientific look at the difference. Here is my sort of stock second serve backhand, try and kick it up a little bit with the MP. As you can see, nice lot of kick, good spin generation, and here it is with the Tour. As you can see, there is quite a marked difference as to how much my sort of pretty shoddy technique gets when it comes to kick. Looking at this from a sort of a subjective point of view, then I prefer the Tour. It is much more in line with the sort of rackets that I like to play with. It's got a nice controlled response with, I guess, more than average spin potential than a typical control racket, and certainly there's potential for customization, and I like a 98 square inch head, so it sort of stacks up for me, and I think it's a great racket, but it's got to be compared to the right things, like I think the E-Zone, the Pure Strike, and then I suppose, you know, yes, maybe the V-Core 98 as well. But is it a true extreme? Then from, I guess, a sort of non-bias and personal preference perspective, I don't really view the Tour as a sort of classic extreme style racket. And if you are someone who's looking for extreme power and extreme spin, then you're probably better off looking at the MP, maybe the Pro, or looking at the Aero if they are characteristics that you want. So in summary then, spiral fibers have done it again. I think they have sort of positively changed the feel on the line without them needing to make sort of huge changes. Definitely have got the same mold when it comes to that MP. The Tour is a great new racket, great new addition. Like, I guess, a lot of trends at the moment, it's sort of tagged into that line and it doesn't really fit with a lot of the line's characteristics, but taken on its own merit, it's a really nice racket that people should check out. I think the styling's great. I think certainly people who like those sort of extreme yellow colours still get it in the handle and at the lower parts, so it will still appeal to you. People who are more conservative like me, then they'll also be appealed by the grey colour, so I think that's a real winner. So good stuff for head. I certainly would pick the Extreme MP if I was looking for a 300 gram sprint and power racket, and I'm going to hold on to the Tour, probably pick up another one and use that as a really interesting project to add to the list of rackets that I could play with. Want to customize it with some weight and see how good I can get it. Hope you enjoyed the review. Next up will be the new Pure Drive in more detail coming soon. I've also got the Prince 93P, and I'm really excited to test out the Prince Phantom 100X 305, the 16x18. That one's, I know, got some good reviews, and my early sort of view on it is that it looks really cool. So thanks for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, as that really helps me out and it will help me bring back more content around new rackets for you guys. See you soon.